I tossed my bag on the couch and flopped down next to it, exhausted after another long day at the lab. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. "Reese, you home?" I called out. No answer. My new roommate was probably out working one of his construction gigs. The guy was built like a brick shithouse, covered in tats from head to toe. Kinda intimidating if I'm being honest. The front door flew open, and speak of the devil, there was Reese stomping inside. He glared at me, eyes narrowed. "You just gonna lie there all day, or you gonna get off your ass and do something useful for once?" I rolled my eyes. "Nice to see you too. Sunshine, rough day on the job site?" Reese grunted, already heading to the kitchen to no doubt crush a protein shake or 10. "You don't want to know." "Probably not," I muttered under my breath, grabbing the remote. At least with him home, the place didn't feel so damn empty anymore. I flipped through the channels mindlessly as Reese chugged whatever sludge he had whipped up in the kitchen. Dude's drinking habits were nasty, but I couldn't judge. My diet consisted of freezer meals and potato chips on a good day. Reese stomped back into the living room, plopping down heavily on the other end of the couch. "Find anything good?" he grunted. I shrugged, just flipping around. An awkward silence fell between us. We'd been roommates for a couple weeks now, but could hardly be called friends. Reese came off angry at the world most days. Can't say I blamed him, though. I'd heard he went through an ugly breakup recently. I started carefully. "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm around." Tree shot me a look like I'd just grown a second head. "Talk about what? The frickin' weather?" "No, jackass, your breakup or whatever. You've been walking around like a grizzly with a thorn in its paw lately." To my surprise, Reese actually cracked a smile at that. "A grizzly, huh? That's a new one." I relaxed a little as the tension eased. "So, on, man, what's eating you?" Reese was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh whether he wanted to open up or not. Finally, he blew out a heavy sigh. "Katrina left me. My girl of 5 years just up and split a month ago." He shook his head bitterly. "Should have seen it coming, I guess. We were always fighting towards the end." "Shit, man. I'm sorry to hear that," I said genuinely. "I knew how much it sucked to have your heart ripped out." Reese just shrugged, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. "Yeah, well, enough about my baggage. What about you? You got a girl stashed away somewhere?" It was my turn to snort out a laugh. "Me? Nah, man, definitely flying solo these days." "No way. Good-looking guy like you." Reese raised an eyebrow. I could feel my cheeks heating up at the compliment. "Well, it's guys for me, actually. I'm gay." There, I'd said it. Held my breath waiting for his reaction. To my relief, Reese just nodded slowly. "So that explained why you never hit on my sister when she came over." We both chuckled at that. Just like that, the walls came down a little more between us. Maybe having this brutally honest guy as a roommate wouldn't be so bad after all. After that night, Reese and I fell into an easy rapport. Having gotten the heavy stuff off our chests, we could just be ourselves around each other. No filters needed. I'd come home from the lab and there'd be a beer waiting for me, or I'd whip up a veggie stir-fry for the both of us without even asking if he wanted any. We moved around each other like an old married couple at times. The physical comfort level amped up too, so I was crashed on the couch watching TV. Reese would flop down right beside me, our shoulders brushing, or I'd rest my socked feet in his lap without thinking twice about it. One night, I woke up disoriented to find myself cocooned in Reese's arms on the couch. We must have dozed off watching a movie. His warmth surrounded me, his breath lightly fanning the nape of my neck. I should have pulled away, put some distance between us. But something rooted me to the spot, rendered me incapable of movement. So I stayed nestled in his embrace, savoring the feeling of safety and comfort for just a little while longer. When morning came, neither of us mentioned the cuddling incident. But it shifted something inside me, certain thoughts and feelings I didn't want to examine too closely. Those cuddling incidents kept happening more and more, and I stopped trying to rationalize or downplay them. There was an undeniable chemistry and intimacy brewing between Reese and me. One night we were squeezed together on the couch as usual, my head resting on his chest. Reese's fingers idly stroked through my hair. The gesture felt so intimate. Coupled with the steady thump of his heartbeat in my ear, it was deeply soothing and comforting. Then Reese's thumb brushed lightly over my cheekbone and rough stubble. An unmistakable spark of attraction zinged through me at the tender caress. I angled my head back to look at him questioningly. Reese's gaze smoldered with an intensity I'd never seen before. My breath hitched as our faces drifted closer and closer until his lips molded over mine in a knee-weakening kiss. Fireworks exploded behind my eyelid. I melted against his solid form, fisting my hands in his shirt to anchor myself. Reese kissed me deeply, thoroughly, like a man starved. When we finally broke apart, I stared at him with swollen lips and hooded eyes. "Reese, what are we doing here?" His calloused thumb traced the plump curve of my lower lip, something I should have done long time ago. That first kiss unlocked the floodgates between us. The lingering glances, casual touches, it all became heated, charged with undeniable want. We were all over each other, constantly, making out like horny teenagers on the couch, in the kitchen, anywhere we could get our hands on one another. But of course, doubts and hang-ups inevitably crept in for Reese. He was a self-proclaimed ladies' man, had never even looked at another guy before me. I could see the internal struggle playing out on his face sometimes when we'd break apart panting from another heated makeout session. One night, in the afterglow with Reese spooning me from behind, I broached the subject. Hey, we should talk about this. Whatever is happening between us. I felt him tense against my back, his arms tightening around me almost protectively. Don't go there, Logan. Don't ruin this. Letting out a frustrated huff, I twisted in his embrace until we were face to face. I'm not trying to ruin anything, babe. I just need to know where your head is at. 'Cause my feelings for you, they're getting pretty damn strong here. Reese's eyes slipped shut, and he leaned his forehead against mine wearily. I know. Believe me, I know. And that terrifies me. But my heart squeezed painfully. Why? Because I to be exhaled heavily. I've never felt this way about a man before. You're the first and only guy who's ever made me question everything about myself. I tried to keep the hurt out of my voice. So what are you saying? That this I gestured between us is just some experimental phase for you. Reese looked stricken. No, baby, that's not what I mean at all. His hands cradled my face urgently. These feelings I have for you, they're the realest thing I've ever felt. Relief washed over me and I melted into his touch. God, just a few words from this man had me eternally gone. Then what's holding you back? I murmured. Why can't you open yourself up fully to what's happening between us? Reese's thumb stroked over my cheekbone. You know my past, Logan, my failed relationships. The shitty way I always pushed people away. His eyes grew haunted. I can't lose you too. My heart broke for him. Without thinking, I surged up to slant my mouth over his insistently. Reese made a noise of surprise against my lips before kissing me back fiercely. We clung to each other desperately, our kiss quickly descending into something ferocious and needy. I don't know how long we stayed like that, tangled together and trying to convey all our unspoken feelings through the collision of our bodies and tongues. When we finally parted, chest heaving, Reese stared down at me with molten eyes. You're not going anywhere, Logan. I won't let you. It was both a vow and a plea, and I sealed it with another searing kiss. Despite Reese's reassurances that night, things shifted after that. A distance began to creep back in between us. The scorching makeout sessions dwindled, replaced by an awkward energy I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried not to read too much into it at first. Reese had been pretty upfront about his fears and hang-ups when it came to fully committing to this thing between us. I got that he needed time and space to work through it all in his head, so I gave him that space no matter how much it killed me. Then one day, I came home early from the lab, anxious to touch base with Reese. But I pulled up short in the hallway, my heart plummeting at the sounds filtering through our apartment door. There was no mistaking the breathy feminine giggles and low rumble of Reese's voice. I should have barged right in and confronted them, but something held me back. Call it cowardice or self-preservation. Instead, I turned right around and spent the night bartending at a buddy's place, trying to drown my misery and confusion in a bottle. The next morning, I dragged myself home to find the place blessedly empty, or so I thought. Padding to the kitchen, I stopped short at the sight of a slender, tattooed arm draped over the bar separating the kitchen from the living room. Following that arm up led me to the tousled form of a gorgeous, scantily clad woman casually perusing her phone while sipping coffee from one of my mugs. My mug. She glanced up and greeted me with an easy smile like I should know who the hell she was. Morning, neighbor. Well, hello, stranger in my apartment whose hair and makeup looks immockably undisturbed by crazy hot sex shenanigans that I definitely didn't hear last night, keeping it real casual and friendly. Just then a shuffling sound came from the hall bathroom. My heart plummeted as Reese emerged, dressed in just a towel. His gaze slid coolly over me, and the woman as he crossed to the kitchen. Didn't realize you got in last night, he remarked gruffly, pouring himself some coffee. That's when I recognized her, the slender arm, the wild mane of caramel curls, the screamy eyes. None other than Reese's ex, the one who shattered him into a million pieces a few months back. Katrina. I just stood there gaping like an idiot while Reese and Katrina made sickeningly casual morning after small talk. Like she hadn't ripped his heart out and stomped on it. Like he hadn't been curled up with me just nights before, murmuring vows about not letting me go. You gonna stand there all day or you want some coffee too? Reese's gruff voice snapped me out of my stupor. I shot him an incredulous look. I know, no coffee for me, thanks. Stalking over, I yanked open the fridge and grabbed a yogurt cup, slamming it down on the counter petulantly. Two could play at this nonchalant game. Reese rolled his eyes at my antics, but Katrina just watched the exchange with careful eyes, like a hawk studying its prey. Maybe she sensed the shift in Reese and his dynamic. "Don't be rude, babe," she chided lightly. "Offer your friend something more substantial than yogurt." My jaw clenched at her use of the word friend. Clearly she had zero idea what was really going on here. Reese shrugged one shoulder lazily. Logan can fend for himself. The indifference, the icy detachment in his voice, it was like a physical blow to my gut. This was the same man who'd held me flush against his body just days ago, branding my skin with hungry kisses and desperate touches. My appetite vanished as, shoving away from the counter, I brushed past him brusquely. "You know what? I've got plans. Don't wait up." "Logan," Eve started, some uncertainty creeping into his tone. But I was already out the door, blinking back the sting of rejection in my eyes as I rushed away from the suffocating apartment. I spent the entire day aimlessly wandering around the city, trying to make sense of the gut punch I'd experienced that morning. Reese had been so tender and vulnerable with me just nights ago, only to do a total 180 by cavorting with his ex, like I meant nothing. And get our connection, our kisses and intimate moments, really mean that little to him. Was I just some experimental fling to get out of his system before he went running back to the safety of heteronormality? The thought made me feel cheap and used. Worse, it made my heart feel like it was being squeezed in a vice. Because despite everything, I was utterly gone for Reese. His soulful eyes, the way his tattered arms made me feel so safe and secure, he'd gotten under my skin in a way no one ever had before. Night had fallen by the time I finally trudged home, utterly drained. I could hear the TV murmuring as I let myself into the apartment, dreading having to face Reese and her. But it was just Reese sprawled on the couch, idly flipping channels with a beer dangling from his fingertips. He glanced over as I shut the door behind me. "You're home." A simple statement, devoid of any warmth or inflection. I gave a tight nod, towing off my shoes and hanging up my jacket, all while avoiding looking directly at him. Yep. The tension was palpable, the silence stretching out unbearably, until finally, "Are we going to talk about it?" Reese's low rumble shattered the quiet. I barked out a harsh, humorless laugh. "About what? Your slutty ex waltzing around our place, making herself at home?" Reese's jaw ticked, but he didn't deny it. "Don't act so shocked. You knew from the jump I had issues, that I wasn't ready for whatever the hell this is between us." Anger and hurt surged through me in equal measure. "So that's it. You're just going to keep stringing me along then. Use me for some male experimentation before going running back to your precious Katrina every time." Reese shot to his feet, getting right in my face so I could smell the beer on his breath. "Don't you dare try to paint me as the asshole here. You knew what you were getting into with me." "Yeah? Well, I must have missed the part where I signed up to be your part-time sex buddy." I shoved him back, needing to put some space between us before I combusted. "You don't get to have it both ways, Reese. Make a choice, me or her. Because I'll be damned if I let you treat me like some disposable nobody." Reese and I stood in heated silence, chests heaving from the force of our raised voices. The anger was palpable, reverberating between us like a live wire. But under that crackling surface, hurt and confusion swirled too. This thing between us had quickly become a tangled, messy knot that we both seemed incapable of unraveling. Finally, Reese scrubbed a hand down his stubble jaw roughly. All the fight bled out of him, leaving a weary sort of resignation in its wake. "You're right," he rasped out. "I don't get to string you along like this. It's not fair to you." He sank heavily onto the couch, head bowed like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. I found myself drifting closer despite my better judgment, the hurt feeling in my chest loosening somewhat. "I'm a mess, Logan," Reese continued in a low rumble. "I told you before how bad I am at this, at letting people in. And he raised his gaze to mine, his eyes full of naked longing. You burrowed in deeper than anyone before. That terrifies me." My breath hitched at his raw honesty. Slowly, cautiously, I lowered myself to the couch beside him. Our knees brushed, and I fought back a shiver. "So you pushed me away," my voice came out barely above a murmur. "Take the coward's way out by running back to your ex." Reese flinched, giving a solemn nod. "I'm fucking broken, baby. You deserve someone who can give you their whole heart without hesitating." I felt the backs of my eyes prickle traitorously. Grabbing his hand, I gave it an insistent squeeze, forcing Reese to meet my gaze again. "Maybe it's not about deserving," I told him fiercely. "Maybe you're the one I chose, the one who gets me like no one else does, flaws, fears, and all." Reese's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Then, without warning, he was surging forward and capturing my lips in a searing, desperate kiss. I melted against him instantly, craving the drugging taste and feel of him. We clutched at each other hungrily. like it had been years rather than days since our last embrace. When we finally tore apart, I was trembling and breathing raggedly. "No more running," I pleaded in a whisper-soft voice. Reese's calloused thumb traced the line of my cheekbone reverently. "No more running," he echoed in solemn vow. Then he slanted his mouth over mine again in a drugging, knee-weakening kiss that promised so much more to come. Reese and I barely came up for air the rest of that night. Our kisses quickly turned fevered, hands roaming and clutching desperately, like we were trying to imprint ourselves onto each other's very souls. All the pent-up longing, uncertainty, and fear between us poured out in a heated rush. It was messy and primal, an almost violent craving to possess one another completely after so much angst. At some point, we shed our clothes in a flurry, leaving a trail to the bedroom. I drank in the sight of Reese's chiseled, tattooed form hungrily, committing every defined muscle and sinuous line to memory. He was art personified, and he was mine. That first time together was a blur of sweat-slicked skin, labored breathing, and the harsh sound of our moans intermingling. I'll never forget the exquisite burn of Reese finally pushing inside me, stretching me open so exquisitely. We moved together with a ferocious, almost animalistic intensity. My fingernails left livid scores down the broad planes of his back as he pounded into me relentlessly. I keened his name over and over, a desperate refrain. Afterwards, we lay tangled in a sweaty, panting heap, our heavy breathing slowly evening out. Reese nuzzled his scruffy jaw against the crook of my neck, placing soft, open-mouthed kisses to the delicate skin there. Mine, he rasped in a gravelly tone, the possessiveness in that one word sending molten desire licking through my veins anew. I hummed in agreement, too blissed out to form words. Just traced the whirling patterns of his arm tattoos in a light caress. In that moment, with Reese's solid weight draped over me and the comforting musk of sex and masculine vigor surrounding us, I'd never felt so complete, so deliriously content. We must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing I knew, pale morning light filtered through the curtains. Reese still slumbered peacefully beside me, one arm flung possessively over my waist. Smiling to myself, I pressed a soft kiss to the swell of his bicep before carefully extricating myself. I padded to the bathroom to grab a washcloth, humming quietly under my breath. The blissful mood was shattered the second I re-entered the bedroom and found Katrina perched brazenly on the end of the bed. A slow, knowing smile stretched her lips. I froze in the doorway, clutching the washcloth to my naked body uselessly as Katrina's piercing gaze raked over me in clear appraisal. Well, looks like the lovebirds finally consummated their little fling," she purred in a low, sultry tone laced with derision. My mouth opened and closed soundlessly as humiliation and anger battled within me. How dare this woman invade our sanctuary, our intimate moment? The bed shifted as Reese began to stir, blinking awake in confusion. "Logan, why?" His gruff voice cut off abruptly when he registered Katrina's presence. "How the fuck did you get in here?" Katrina shrugged one slim shoulder negligently, picked the lock. "You know I've always been good with my hands." She shot me a pointed look, among other things. Reese surged upright, the sheet pooling around his waist as he pinned her with a thunderous glare. "Get out, now." "Oh, come on, babe, don't be like that." Katrina slinked closer on all fours, her predatory movements reminding me of a panther sizing up its prey. You know, deep down, this little dalliance with Logan is just you working through some curiosities. We both know it doesn't mean anything real. The venom in her tone made me flinch. But before I could snap back a rebuke, Reese was speaking in a tone of forced calm. "You're right, Kat. It doesn't mean anything. We're done here." My heart plummeted at his words, even as Katrina smirked victoriously. I opened my mouth to demand what the hell he meant by that, but Reese silenced me with a look. "Now get your shit and get out of my place." For good this time, his voice brooked no argument. Katrina's brow furrowed in confusion. "But I thought you just said—" "I said what I had to in order to get you to leave quietly." Reese cut her off in a hard tone. "But make no mistake, you and me." He shook his head vehemently. "We're ancient history. Logan's the only person I want in my life from now on. So do us both a favor and disappear." I could only gape at him, bemused as Katrina's features contorted with impotent rage. She opened her mouth, clearly priming herself to launch a tirade, but seemed to think better of it. With one last venomous glare, she turned on her heel and stormed from the bedroom, the front door slamming moments later behind her retreating form. The resounding silence afterwards was deafening. I stared at Reese, feeling raw and unmoored. He met my gaze steadily, all the uncertainty of before banished from his expression. "You heard me, right?" His voice was quiet but left no room for doubt. "You're everything to me now, Logan. The past is done." And just like that, any remaining sting from Katrina's words faded away to insignificance. I crossed the room in a few strides, climbing back into Reese's arms where I belonged. Say it again, I demanded hoarsely. He obliged without hesitation, punctuating his vow with a soul-searing kiss. You're mine, baby. As Reese's calloused hands roamed over my body, I was quickly consumed by his intense lust. We devoured each other hungrily, mouths and tongues moving in a frenzy as the heat between us reached boiling point. I wasn't sure what had come over me, but suddenly I had an overwhelming urge to shamelessly be with Reese on a deeper level. Take me. My voice was breathless and raspy as I gazed into his eyes. The look he returned, full of fire and passion, made my heart race. In one swift motion, he had me pinned to the bed, like he knew exactly what I craved. Reese looked back at me with pure desire, more so than any woman he had ever looked at before. He was teasing me, making me burn for him in a way I didn't think possible. Soon we were a tangled, sweaty mess as he took me again and again, relentlessly pounding into me with a ferocity that made me scream out in blissful torture. He was a force of reckoning as he explored my body in ways no one else had done before. Every groan, every thrust sent me higher than I could imagine, until finally he pushed me over the edge in a mind-shattering orgasm. By the time morning light filtered through the curtains, I could barely move. I had never experienced sexual intensity like that, weary but utterly content. I allowed myself to revel in the moment for a little while longer before finally dragging myself out to start the day. Only to find the man never came home last night, and you do not know where. I stepped out of the bedroom, a tired but satisfied smile on my face from the incredible night of passion Reese and I had shared. But the smile quickly slipped as I realized the apartment was empty and silent. Reese, I called out, padding through the living room. No answer. Strange, he was always up with the sunrise, either nursing a protein shake or getting ready to head to one of his construction gigs. Had he slipped out already without saying goodbye? A cold prickle of unease went through me as I checked my phone. No new messages from him. That wasn't like Reese at all, even before we became intimate. He always made a point to let me know his whereabouts nowadays. So the knot of anxiety in my gut grew as the minutes ticked by with no word from him. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. That never happened. Reese was militant about keeping his phone on and charged. By late afternoon, I was low-key freaking out, my mind spiraling to all the worst-case scenarios. Had Reese gotten cold feet after finally consummating our relationship? Had Katrina somehow sunk her claws back into him and spirited him away? No, I refused to believe that, not after the complete certainty in Reese's eyes as he claimed me as his and put Katrina firmly in the past. Still, my restless pacing continued, broken only by obsessively checking my phone every few minutes. Darkness fell outside and a deathly hush consumed the apartment. Just when I was 2 seconds away from losing it completely, the sound of a key turning in the lock made me whirl around. Reese shouldered his way through the door, chest heaving like he'd been exerting himself. His eyebrows shot up when he caught sight of my no-doubt haggard appearance. Logan, you okay, babe? Cells of relief and anger swamped me in equal measure. Me? Are you okay? I demanded, closing the distance between us in a few strides so I could run my hands over him as if checking for injuries. Where the hell have you been? Do you know how worried I was? Catching my wrists, Reese halted my frantic movements and ducked his head until our foreheads touched gently. Hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to worry you like this. His gravelly voice washed over me soothingly. Work called with an emergency upgrade at one of the sites. Had to rush out without my phone and go straight there. I sagged against him, tension bleeding out of me as his explanation sank in. Of course, it was just a miscommunication, my mind getting the better of me as usual. Shit, Reese, I thought I don't know what I thought. I let out a shaky breath, winding my arms around his solid waist and burying my face in the warm curve of his neck. Just don't scare me like that again, yeah? His embrace tightened, the hard planes of his body suffusing me with a sense of security only he could provide. Never again, baby, I promise. A calloused hand cradled the back of my head, his lips brushing my temple. You're stuck with me now, Logan. I love you. The words hung in the air heavily, their weight and truth seeping into me like a physical force. I pulled back just enough to meet Reese's intense gaze burning with conviction. He loved me. Those 3 words I never thought I'd hear from this complicated, emotionally guarded man, and in that instant, I knew with every fiber of my being he meant them, that I was it for him just like he was it for me. So I claimed his lips in a searing, all-consuming kiss that was a vow, a benediction, all the words I couldn't articulate aloud. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against Reese's and simply basked in the profound sense of belonging and rightness that always stole over me when I was with him. I love you too, I murmured fervently. Always, Reese, always.